You think you know fried chicken? You only know the version they let you see. Black grandmothers across the South perfected techniques so sacred they took them to their graves. These recipes weren't written down. They were whispered, guarded, and sometimes buried with their creators. Here are 60 fried chicken secrets that were never meant to leave the kitchen.
Fried whitings were affordable fish that became Friday night staples in African American households across the South and urban North alike. These small, silvery fish were cleaned whole, seasoned with salt and pepper, dredged in cornmeal, and fried until the thin skin turned shatteringly crisp. The flesh was mild and sweet, flaking easily from delicate bones that required careful eating. Whitings were cheaper than most fish, making them accessible for families stretching weekly budgets. Fish markets sold them by the pound, and vendors drove through neighborhoods announcing their arrival. The smell of frying whitings signaled weekend had arrived, drawing family members to the kitchen. Served with hot sauce, white bread, and coleslaw, fried whitings were celebration food that cost little but delivered satisfaction. Egg wash enrichment added beaten eggs to the buttermilk soak, creating a thicker coating that adhered better and fried richer. The eggs provided protein that helped flour stick while adding richness to the final crust. Some grandmothers beat the eggs separately and dipped chicken after the buttermilk soak, but before flouring, creating distinct layers. Others mixed eggs directly into the buttermilk for a simpler one-step process. The egg wash also helped coating develop deeper golden color during frying, making the chicken look as good as it tasted. This technique required slightly more ingredients, but delivered results that impressed guests and won compliments at gatherings. The added richness made each piece feel more substantial, turning ordinary meals into occasions worth remembering. Cayenne pepper fried chicken delivered bold heat that separated the adventurous eaters from those who preferred milder fare. The cayenne was mixed directly into the seasoned flour, its bright red color warning of the fire to come. Black mothers in the 1960s knew exactly how much to add, balancing the burn with enough salt and black pepper to create harmony. The heat hit immediately when biting through the crispy crust, then mellowed as the tender meat cooled the tongue. Some households served this only to adults, while children ate the regular version. Others raised their children on spicy food from the beginning. The cayenne bloomed in the hot oil, releasing its fragrance throughout the kitchen. This wasn't timid cooking, but bold flavor that announced itself with every piece. Garlic powder, layering built flavor from the inside out rather than just sprinkling seasoning on the surface. Grandmothers rubbed garlic powder directly onto the raw chicken before the buttermilk soak, then added more to the flour coating. This double application meant garlic flavor penetrated the meat while also seasoning the crust. Fresh garlic would burn in hot grease, but the powder withstood frying temperatures and bloomed into something rich and savory. The technique worked because garlic's oils needed time to penetrate, and the overnight soak gave them that time. Children grew up associating the smell of garlic-scented flour with Sunday afternoons. The layered approach meant no single bite lacked seasoning, solving the problem of bland chicken hidden under flavorful coating. This was flavor engineering before anyone called it that. Fried hog maws were testament to the soul food philosophy that nothing from the pig should go to waste. The pig's stomach was cleaned meticulously, boiled until tender, then sliced into strips and fried until edges turned crispy while the center stayed chewy. The flavor was mild and porky, taking on whatever seasonings the cook chose to add. Families who grew up eating hog maws considered them comfort food, while those unfamiliar often needed convincing. The dish appeared at holiday tables and community gatherings where traditional foods were celebrated. Elders passed down preparation techniques, teaching younger generations the patience required to clean and cook them properly. Fried hog maws carried cultural significance beyond their flavor. Double dredge coating method created the thick, craggy crust that made church fried chicken legendary among congregations everywhere. After soaking in buttermilk, each piece was dredged in seasoned flour, dipped back into buttermilk, then dredged again before hitting hot oil. This double coating built layers that fried into ridges and peaks of golden crunch that shattered beautifully. Grandmothers worked quickly to prevent coating from becoming gummy, keeping one hand dry for flour and one wet for buttermilk throughout the entire process. The technique required practice. Too light a touch and coating fell off, too heavy and it became dense and chewy. Some added cornstarch for extra crispiness, while others insisted pure flour was the only proper way. Sunday dinner fried chicken held a special significance that went beyond the meal itself, marking the most important gathering of the week. After church services, families returned home where mothers had already begun preparing the feast. The chicken was often the centerpiece, fried to perfection while dressed in Sunday best clothes with aprons protecting fabric. Children set tables with good china while the smell of frying chicken filled every room. Extended family often joined, turning the meal into a reunion that happened weekly. The fried chicken had to be perfect because it represented hospitality and devotion combined. Mothers woke early to season and soak the meat, timing everything so it came out of the oil just as everyone sat down. Sunday dinner fried chicken was tradition and faith on a platter. Self-rising flour coating produced extra crispy chicken without separate leavening agents. Grandmothers discovered that baking powder already in self-rising flour created tiny bubbles when wet chicken hit hot grease. Those bubbles expanded and set quickly, forming a lighter, crunchier crust than plain flour could achieve. The coating puffed slightly as it fried, creating texture that shattered with a sound heard across the kitchen. This technique required less seasoning since self-rising flour already contained salt. The result was chicken that looked almost tempura-like in its delicate crunch. Grandmothers passed this secret quietly, warning that too much handling would deflate the flour. Chicken had to go from bag to skillet quickly before baking powder exhausted. This was chicken for those who valued crunch above all. Fried sweet potato pies were portable treasures that turned holiday flavors into handheld treats perfect for church socials. Cooks prepared spiced sweet potato filling, tucked it inside rounds of homemade dough, then sealed the edges before lowering them into hot oil. The crust fried golden and flaky while filling stayed warm and creamy, creating packages of comfort eaten without plates or forks. These hand pies appeared at revivals, picnics, and homecomings where food needed to travel well. The filling used beloved spices, including cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla that perfumed the air. Children loved these because they could eat while playing without returning to the table. Fried sweet potato pies was celebration food made practical, bringing holiday warmth to everyday occasions. Seasoned salt secret blend was mixed by hand in small batches and stored in repurposed spice jars. Grandmothers combined regular salt with garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, black pepper, and sometimes cayenne in proportions they never wrote down. The mixture was rubbed generously onto chicken before the buttermilk soak, creating a base layer that penetrated the meat. Each family's blend was slightly different, making their fried chicken recognizable at community gatherings. Some added celery salt or dried herbs, while others kept it simple with just 4 ingredients. The homemade blend cost pennies compared to store-bought but delivered flavor commercial products could never match. Children learn to make it by watching, carrying the knowledge forward. Double-dip fried chicken created an extra thick crust that became legendary at church picnics and family reunions throughout the 1960s. The technique required dipping buttermilk-soaked chicken into seasoned flour, then back into buttermilk, and finally into the flour again before frying. This second coating built up layers that fried into a substantial shell, crunchy on the outside while protecting the meat's moisture. Black mothers perfected the rhythm of dipping, knowing exactly how long to let excess batter drip before moving to the next step. The result was chicken that looked impressive and tasted even better, with coating thick enough to hold onto seasonings and create pockets of incredible texture. Each bite offered contrast between the shatteringly crisp exterior and tender meat within. Pickle juice, brine transformed cheap chicken into something tender and tangy without spending extra money. When pickles were gone, the jar of salty vinegary brine remained, and grandmothers knew exactly what to do with it. Chicken pieces were submerged in that green-tinged liquid overnight, sometimes mixed with water to stretch it further. Salt and vinegar worked together to break down tough fibers while infusing meat with subtle tanginess. This technique was popular in lean times when buttermilk was too expensive. The juice cost nothing since it would otherwise be poured down the drain. After brining, chicken was patted dry and coated as usual, but the flavor difference was unmistakable. The tanginess added brightness that cut through grease. Grandmothers who used this method guarded the secret carefully. Fried pig ears were crunchy delicacies, showcasing the soul food commitment to using every part of the hog. The ears were cleaned, boiled until tender, then sliced into strips and fried until impossibly crispy, shattering with each bite. The texture was unique, mostly cartilage that became crackling and light when properly fried, carrying mild pork flavor enhanced by seasonings. Families served them as snacks or bar food, often with hot sauce and vinegar on the side. The ears were affordable because butchers sold them cheaply, making them accessible during lean times. Children either loved or avoided them based on texture preferences, but those who acquired the taste craved them into adulthood. Fried pig ears proved resourcefulness and deliciousness could coexist. Smothered fried chicken transformed already perfect fried pieces into something even more deeply comforting. After initial frying, chicken was placed back in the skillet and covered with rich gravy made from pan drippings, onions, and milk. The lid went on and everything simmered until coating softened and absorbed savory sauce while meat grew even more tender. This was weeknight cooking at its finest, stretching Sunday's fried chicken into Tuesday's dinner with deepening flavors. The gravy-soaked crust became almost dumpling-like, falling apart against the tongue while meat remained distinct. Children often preferred this to fresh fried because sauce made everything easier to eat and taste richer. Grandmothers knew this dish proved good food should never go to waste. Smothered fried chicken transformed crispy pieces into tender, gravy-covered comfort that stretched meals further and satisfied completely. After frying chicken to golden perfection, mothers would remove most of the oil, leaving the brown bits and enough fat to make gravy. Flour was whisked in until it formed a paste, then milk or water was added slowly while stirring constantly. The chicken was returned to the skillet and covered, simmering in the thick gravy until the meat practically fell from the bone. The crispy coating softened and absorbed the savory sauce, creating textures and flavors that contrasted beautifully. This technique turned a single chicken into enough food for large families, with the gravy spooned over rice or biscuits to make everyone full. Smothered fried chicken represented resourcefulness at its finest. Brown paper bag shake kept kitchens clean and chicken perfectly crusted without fancy equipment. Grandmothers saved grocery bags, knowing the rough interior helped flour cling while containing the mess. Seasoned flour went in first, mixed with salt, pepper, paprika, and secret family spices. Buttermilk-soaked pieces were dropped in 2 at a time, the top folded shut, then shaken until covered. The motion had to be vigorous but controlled. Children often helped with shaking, learning rhythm that would become their own technique. The paper absorbed excess moisture while flour adhered in layers that fried up golden. This method used less flour than dredging in bowls, stretching resources when money was tight. When the bag got too damp, a fresh one took its place. That simple bag became legendary in Black kitchens everywhere. Fried fish roe was a springtime tradition that brought excitement to African American tables when rivers ran full and fish were spawning. The roe sacks were carefully extracted, rinsed gently, and seasoned with salt and pepper before being dredged in cornmeal and lowered into sizzling lard. The coating turned crispy while the roe inside became firm yet slightly creamy, offering briny richness unlike anything else. Families near rivers considered this a seasonal treasure available only during spawning months. Children learned to appreciate its unique texture, watching elders prepare it with reverence passed through generations. Fried fish roe was often served alongside grits and eggs for breakfast, turning morning meals into something special. Hot sauce, marinade soak was the secret behind chicken that carried heat deep into the meat rather than just on the surface. Chicken sat overnight in buttermilk mixed with generous splashes of Louisiana-style hot sauce, letting vinegar and pepper penetrate every fiber. This produced meat that tingled with warmth from first bite to last, surprising those who expected heat only from the crust. Grandmothers adjusted amounts based on family preferences, making milder batches for children while preparing spicier pieces for adults. The vinegar also tenderized, working alongside buttermilk for impossibly juicy results. Some families used their own pepper sauce from garden-grown peppers. The technique proved seasoning worked best when given time to develop. Brown bag fried chicken used a simple paper sack to create the most evenly coated pieces without mess. Mothers would place seasoned flour into a brown paper grocery bag, then add a few chicken pieces at a time and shake vigorously until each was completely covered. The technique ensured every surface received an even layer of flour while keeping the kitchen counter clean. Children often helped with the shaking, turning the mundane task into something fun and participatory. The paper absorbed excess moisture from the chicken, helping the flour adhere better and creating a crispier final product. After shaking, each piece was lifted out gently to preserve the coating before being lowered into hot oil. This practical method proved that good fried chicken didn't require fancy equipment. Cayenne pepper heat was the quiet fire that made grandmother's chicken memorable without announcing itself too loudly. A teaspoon or two went into the flour coating, dispersed evenly so the heat spread throughout rather than concentrating in spots. The cayenne bloomed in the hot grease, releasing its oils and infusing the entire crust with gentle warmth. This was not the aggressive heat of hot sauce, but something subtler that crept up on you as you ate. Grandmothers adjusted amounts based on family preferences, but even the mildest versions contained enough cayenne to add dimension. The pepper also contributed color, deepening the golden brown of the finished crust. Children who grew up with this heat often found restaurant chicken bland and one-dimensional. The cayenne was never the star, but its absence was always noticed. Fried corn fritters were summer celebrations that captured the sweetness of fresh-picked corn in crispy golden packages. Cooks scraped kernels from cobs, mixed them with flour, eggs, and seasonings, then dropped spoonfuls into hot oil where they puffed and browned. The fritters were sweet and savory, tender inside with crispy edges, providing textural contrast. Families made these when corn season peaked and ears were so abundant that new uses became necessary. Church picnics featured platters served warm with butter or honey drizzled on top. Children loved them because they tasted almost like dessert while being acceptable as a side dish. Fried corn fritters was summer preserved in every bite, a taste that lingered in memory long after harvest ended. Garlic clove rub involved crushing fresh garlic and rubbing it directly onto chicken pieces before any other seasoning was applied. The raw garlic released oils that penetrated the skin and meat, creating depth of flavor that powdered garlic could never achieve. Grandmothers used the side of a knife to smash cloves, then press the paste into every crevice of the chicken with their fingers. The garlic mellowed during frying, losing its sharp bite while leaving behind rich, savory undertones. This extra step took time that busy cooks often skipped, but those who practiced it knew the difference was worth the effort. The technique connected fried chicken to other garlic-forward dishes in the Southern repertoire. Some grandmothers added the smashed garlic directly to the buttermilk soak, infusing the entire marinade with its essence. Garlic salt fried chicken simplified seasoning while delivering bold flavor that penetrated every bite. During the 1960s, garlic salt became a kitchen staple that saved time without sacrificing taste. Mothers would mix it directly into the flour along with black pepper and perhaps a touch of paprika for color. The garlic flavor intensified during frying, filling kitchens with an aroma that drew family members from other rooms. The salt component helped form a crispier crust, while the garlic added savory depth that plain salt couldn't achieve. Some cooks added fresh garlic powder on top of the garlic salt for extra intensity. The convenience of the pre-mixed seasoning allowed busy mothers to prepare fried chicken on weeknights when time was short. Garlic salt fried chicken proved that simple shortcuts could still produce memorable results. Black pepper crust used coarse ground pepper in generous amounts, creating visible specks throughout the coating that delivered sharp bursts of heat with every bite. Grandmothers preferred freshly cracked pepper when they could get it, knowing the oils in pre-ground pepper faded quickly. The pepper was mixed into flour in quantities that would seem excessive to timid cooks, but grandmothers understood frying mellowed spices and required bold seasoning. The coarse grind meant some pieces carried more pepper than others, creating variety within each batch. This rustic approach produced chicken with character and surprise, never boring or predictable. The pepper also aided digestion, cutting through the richness of fried food. Black pepper crust was honest country cooking that announced itself without apology. Fried okra fritters were clever ways to transform garden abundance into something crispy and irresistible during summer months. Cooks would slice fresh okra, mix it with cornmeal batter seasoned with onion and spices, then drop spoonfuls into hot oil until they puffed golden brown. The fritters emerged with crunchy exteriors, giving way to tender okra inside, the vegetable's natural slickness mellowed by frying. Families made these when gardens overflowed with okra, needing use before growing too tough. Church suppers featured platters passed around while still warm and fragrant. The dish was economical since okra grew easily in southern soil. Children who claimed to dislike okra devoured these fritters, proving preparation mattered as much as ingredients. Church social bird was fried chicken, prepared specifically for after-service gatherings where reputation was at stake. These chickens were selected for uniform size, so every piece cooked evenly, seasoned generously, because food would sit on tables for hours. Grandmothers started Saturday night soaking birds and mixing seasonings, so Sunday morning meant only coating and frying. The chicken was fried darker than usual to stay crispy at room temperature, packed in towel-lined baskets rather than covered containers that trapped steam. Every grandmother had competitors at these gatherings, and empty platters told who won. Children learned early that taking from another family's basket was serious violation. This chicken represented a grandmother's entire culinary reputation. Pickle juice, brined fried chicken used the tangy liquid left behind in empty pickle jars, adding unique flavor while tenderizing the meat. Black mothers understood that discarding pickle brine meant wasting a powerful ingredient that could transform tough chicken into something memorable. The chicken soaked overnight in the salty, vinegary liquid, absorbing the dill and garlic flavors that had infused the brine. When coated and fried, the chicken carried subtle pickle undertones that surprised and delighted anyone who tasted it. The acidity worked like buttermilk to break down tough fibers, while the salt penetrated deep into the meat. Children often didn't know the secret ingredient until they were old enough to help in the kitchen. Pickle juice, brined chicken proved that resourcefulness created some of the most interesting flavors. Double dip coating method built crust thick enough to stay crispy even after sitting in a basket for hours. Grandmothers who sold chicken at church fundraisers knew thin coatings would turn soggy. After the first shake in seasoned flour, chicken went back into buttermilk and then into flour again. This double layer created tiny air pockets that fried extra crunchy while insulating meat from drying out. Some grandmothers did 3 dips for the thickest possible shell. Each layer had to dry slightly before the next, requiring patience and counter space lined with newspaper. The finished pieces looked almost battered rather than simply coated, with ridges and peaks that turned dark gold in hot grease. This was fried chicken meant to impress and last through long Sunday afternoons. Fried chicken livers were treasured delicacies in African American kitchens during the 1960s and 70s, prized for their rich flavor and economical value. Cooks would rinse the livers, pat them dry, then dredge them in seasoned flour with paprika and cayenne before lowering them into hot oil. The exterior turned golden and crispy, while the inside stayed creamy, creating contrast that made every bite memorable. Families served them at gatherings and packed them for workers heading to factories. The livers were affordable because butchers sold them cheaply or included them free with whole chickens. Served with hot sauce and white bread, fried chicken livers represented thrift and resourcefulness that defined soul food cooking. Cast iron seasoned skillet technique meant the pan itself contributed flavor built up over decades of use. Grandmothers never washed these skillets with soap. They wiped them clean, heated them dry, and rubbed them with oil to maintain the black coating. The seasoned surface created natural non-stick properties that let chicken release perfectly without tearing the crust. Heat distributed evenly across the heavy bottom, eliminating hot spots that could burn some pieces, while undercooking others. Some grandmothers used the same cast iron their own grandmothers had cooked in, making each piece a connection to generations past. The pan's weight kept oil temperature stable when cold chicken was added, preventing the soggy crust that came from temperature drops. Cast iron skillet fried chicken carried a flavor that no modern pan could replicate, thanks to decades of seasoning built into the metal itself. Black mothers treasured their cast iron skillets, often inheriting them from grandmothers who had cooked thousands of meals in the same pan. The iron distributed heat evenly and held temperature steady when cold chicken was added, preventing the oil from dropping too low. Each batch added another layer of seasoning to the skillet, creating a non-stick surface that improved with every use. The weight of the pan allowed for perfect browning, with the chicken developing a deep golden crust that stayed crispy even after cooling. Women knew exactly how much oil to add and when to flip each piece without looking at a thermometer. Cast iron lid, steam trick, guaranteed chicken cooked through without burning the crust or leaving insides dangerously raw. Grandmothers learned that hot grease alone could deceive, browning outside while meat near the bone stayed pink. After chicken fried golden on both sides, the heavy lid was placed over the skillet and heat lowered. Steam built up, cooking pieces gently from all directions. The moisture kept crust from drying while trapped heat finished the job. After 10 minutes, the lid came off and heat went back up to re-crisp the coating. This two-stage method meant the thickest thighs and drumsticks were safe without sacrificing crunch. Grandmothers timed this by instinct, knowing exactly when to remove the lid before crust turned soft and lost its signature shatter. Fried pork chop sandwiches were working-class treasures that fueled laborers through long days in factories and fields. Thin-cut pork chops were pounded flat, seasoned with salt, pepper, and garlic, then dredged in flour and fried until edges turned crispy while meat stayed juicy. Slapped between soft white bread with mustard and pickles, these sandwiches traveled well and satisfied hunger like few other meals. Families made them early mornings, wrapping them in wax paper for husbands heading to work before dawn. The pork chops were affordable cuts that stretched when fried thin and served between bread. Children received smaller versions as treats, learning good food required no expensive ingredients. These sandwiches represented honest labor and care families put into keeping workers fed. Honey drizzle finish was applied to hot fried chicken straight from the oil, creating a sweet glaze that set into the crust. The honey was warmed slightly so it poured easily, then drizzled over each piece while steam still rose from the golden coating. The heat partially caramelized the honey, creating sticky sweet spots that contrasted beautifully with the savory, peppery crust beneath. This technique was reserved for special occasions because honey was expensive, but when it appeared, everyone knew the meal was a celebration. Some grandmothers added a pinch of cayenne to the honey for sweet heat that lingered on the lips. Others mixed in a splash of hot sauce for a more complex flavor profile that balanced sweet, salty, and spicy in every bite. The honey finish made ordinary fried chicken feel like a feast. Honey, drizzled, fried chicken combined crispy coating with sticky sweetness that made fingers worth licking clean. After frying the chicken to golden perfection, mothers would drizzle warm honey over the pieces while they were still hot from the oil. The honey seeped into the crust, creating pockets of sweetness that contrasted with the savory seasoned flour. Some families added a pinch of cayenne to the honey, creating a sweet heat combination. The technique required timing because the honey had to hit the chicken at just the right temperature to absorb properly without making the coating soggy. Children especially love this version, often asking for extra drizzles. Honey drizzled fried chicken proved that sweet and savory belonged together long before trendy restaurants discovered it. Lard and bacon grease blend gave fried chicken deep savory richness that vegetable oil could never match. Grandmothers kept coffee, cans on the stove filled with rendered bacon fat saved from every breakfast. When frying day came, that precious grease was combined with fresh lard from the butcher or rendered at home from pork trimmings. The mixture created frying fat with a higher smoke point, but all the smoky, salty flavor baked into every piece. Chicken emerged with golden crust that tasted of Sunday mornings. Using this fat meant nothing was wasted, and grease could be strained and reused several times. Grandmothers knew exactly when the grease was spent, judging by color and smell alone. This was cooking by feel rather than thermometers, producing chicken that could not be replicated any other way. Fried apple fritters were sweet indulgences that turned seasonal fruit into golden rings of comfort during autumn harvest months. Cooks sliced apples into rounds, dipped them in sweetened batter spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg, then fried until coating puffed and turned deep golden while fruit inside softened. The fritters were dusted with powdered sugar while warm, creating a snowy coating that melted against the hot surface. Families made these when apple trees produced more fruit than could be eaten fresh, turning abundance into celebration. Children gathered around skillets waiting for the first batch, burning fingers in eagerness. Church bake sales featured platters wrapped in wax paper, sold for pennies supporting community causes. Fried apple fritters were autumn in every bite. Paprika, heavy seasoning, gave fried chicken its signature reddish gold color that signaled proper preparation from across the room. Grandmothers used paprika generously in their flour blend, sometimes adding as much as 2 tablespoons per cup of flour. The spice provided color more than heat, though some used Hungarian paprika for deeper flavor and complexity. The coating emerged from the oil with that distinctive hue that made mouths water before the first bite was taken. Beyond appearance, paprika added subtle sweetness that balanced salt and pepper in the seasoning blend. Some grandmothers mixed sweet and smoked paprika together for complexity that kept people guessing about the recipe. The visual impact mattered because fried chicken was often judged by color before taste, and that deep golden red announced expertise. Hot sauce marinated fried chicken brought Louisiana heat to kitchens across the South, with mothers adding their preferred hot sauce directly to the buttermilk soak. The vinegar in the hot sauce worked alongside the buttermilk to tenderize the meat even further, while the pepper infused every fiber with gentle warmth. Children learned early which bottles contained the serious heat and which offered just a tingle. The spice didn't overwhelm, but instead enhanced the chicken's natural flavor, creating layers of taste that unfolded with each bite. Some mothers used Crystal, others preferred Louisiana brand, and a few made their own pepper sauces from garden chilies. The heat built slowly, warming the mouth without burning. This technique turned ordinary fried chicken into something with personality that guests remembered long after the meal. Room temperature resting was the step most cooks skipped, but every grandmother knew was essential for chicken that cooked evenly. Cold chicken dropped into hot grease, shocked the fat and lowered temperature, causing coating to absorb oil rather than crisp properly. Grandmothers pulled chicken from the refrigerator at least an hour before frying, letting it warm slowly while flour coating set and dried on the surface. This rest allowed seasoning to penetrate deeper, and buttermilk to fully absorb. The result was chicken that sizzled immediately upon hitting grease, forming a seal that kept juices inside. Without this step, even perfect technique could not save chicken cold at the center. This patience was the difference between good chicken and legendary chicken people still talk about. Fried rabbit pieces were country cooking at its finest, turning wild game or backyard hutch rabbits into crispy, tender meals rivaling any fried chicken. The rabbit was jointed, soaked in buttermilk to tenderize the lean meat, then dredged in seasoned flour and fried until golden brown with a crust that crackled with every bite. The meat inside stayed moist and mild, taking on seasoning flavors while maintaining delicate texture distinguishing it from poultry. Rural families raised rabbits for frying because they reproduced quickly and required little space or feed. Children learned to help with preparation, understanding where food came from and respecting animals that sustained them. Fried rabbit was often served at special gatherings, considered more refined than everyday fare. It represented self-sufficiency. Brown paper bag seasoning technique achieved perfectly coated chicken pieces without making a floury mess across the kitchen. Seasoned flour went into a large grocery bag, then chicken pieces were added a few at a time and the top folded shut before shaking vigorously. The tumbling action coated every surface evenly while keeping flour contained. Children were often recruited for shaking duty, making them feel included while grandmothers tended hot oil. The paper absorbed excess moisture from the chicken's surface, helping flour stick better than coating done on plates. After use, the bag was saved for next frying day, building seasoned flour that carried memory of previous batches. This showed how grandmothers solved practical problems with creativity. Seasoned flour fried chicken carried secret spice blends that varied from kitchen to kitchen, with each mother guarding her particular combination. The base was always all-purpose flour mixed with salt and black pepper, but the additions made each version unique. Some added garlic powder and onion powder for savory depth, while others included cayenne for heat or paprika for color. The flour was mixed thoroughly and often stored in dedicated containers, ready whenever fried chicken was needed. Mothers taught daughters to taste a pinch of the seasoned flour, checking the balance before coating any meat. The spices bloomed in the hot oil, releasing aromas that announced dinner was coming. This personalized approach meant no two families made identical fried chicken, creating pride in each household's particular recipe. Buttermilk overnight soak was the foundation of fried chicken that fell off the bone with a crust that shattered between your teeth. Grandmothers understood that cheap, tough chicken needed time to transform, and buttermilk cost almost nothing. The bird was submerged completely in buttermilk mixed with salt, sometimes with hot sauce added for punch. Left overnight or 2 days, the acids slowly broke down tough fibers while salt penetrated deep. The result was chicken that stayed juicy even after frying. This was not a quick process, and grandmothers planned Sunday dinners days in advance. The buttermilk also created a sticky surface that grabbed flour like nothing else could. Without this step, coating would slide off in hot grease. Every grandmother knew patience with the soak separated church-worthy chicken from ordinary fare. Fried chicken wings were pieces left after drumsticks, and thighs claimed center stage, transformed into crispy treasures through careful seasoning and hot oil. The wings were separated at joints, seasoned with salt, pepper, garlic, and paprika, dredged in flour, then fried until skin turned impossibly crispy while meat stayed juicy. The flavor was concentrated poultry richness, the skin providing satisfying crunch with every bite. Families who bought whole chickens saved wings for weeknight meals, stretching one bird across multiple days. Children loved wings because they were perfect handheld sizes, eaten standing up or packed in lunch bags. The bones were sucked clean, every bit of flavor extracted before discarding. Fried wings were practical, delicious, and represented nothing wasted. Shallow pan frying was the economical method that used less oil while still producing excellent results that satisfied hungry families. Instead of deep frying in inches of oil, grandmothers cooked chicken in just enough fat to come halfway up the pieces in the skillet. The chicken was turned once during cooking, allowing both sides to crisp beautifully in the hot oil with care. This method required more attention than deep frying because timing the flip was crucial for even cooking throughout. The technique saved money on expensive cooking fats while producing chicken with one slightly softer side and one extra crispy side. Some families preferred this textural contrast, considering it superior to uniform deep-fried coating. The method also splattered less, keeping kitchens cleaner and reducing the danger of hot oil accidents. Bacon grease-fried chicken incorporated the rendered fat saved from breakfast cooking, adding smoky depth to every golden piece. Black households kept containers of bacon drippings near the stove, understanding that this precious fat was too valuable to discard. When mixed with other oils for frying chicken, bacon grease contributed a subtle smokiness that elevated the entire dish. The practice reflected the waste-nothing philosophy that defined resourceful cooking, turning breakfast leftovers into dinner's secret ingredient. Mothers knew exactly how much bacon grease to add for flavor without overwhelming the chicken's natural taste. The combination created a crust that was both crispy and rich, with undertones that made people ask what made the chicken so delicious. Hot sauce buttermilk marinade put heat deep inside the meat rather than just on the surface. Grandmothers poured generous Louisiana-style hot sauce directly into the buttermilk soak, letting vinegar and pepper work alongside dairy acids. The heat was never overwhelming but present in every bite, warmth that built slowly. This marinade was popular at church picnics where chicken sat out for hours and needed flavor that held up cold. The hot sauce also helped preserve meat in days before reliable refrigeration. Grandmothers adjusted amounts based on who was eating, going lighter for children and heavier when men requested something with kick. The orange-tinged buttermilk stained fingers and promised flavor before the first bite. This technique transformed ordinary fried chicken into something people remembered and requested again. The fried croaker fish were beloved staples at fish fries throughout African American communities along rivers and coastlines. Named for the sound they made when caught, these fish were cleaned, scored, seasoned, then dredged in cornmeal before hitting hot oil. The skin fried into a crackling crust while white flesh inside stayed flaky and moist, falling easily from the bone. Families gathered at community fish fries where croakers sizzled in large outdoor fryers, the smell drawing neighbors from blocks away. The fish were served on newspaper with hot sauce, white bread, and coleslaw. Children learned to eat around bones carefully, developing skills that served them at many future fish fries. Fried croaker represented community gathering and celebration. Pickle juice, brine was the unexpected tenderizing secret borrowed from pickle jars that would otherwise be discarded. Chicken pieces were soaked in the leftover brine from finished pickle jars, letting the vinegar, salt, and spices work overnight. The acid tenderized tough cuts while infusing subtle tang that made the finished chicken taste brighter and more complex. This technique cost nothing extra since the brine was already paid for with the pickles. Some grandmothers mixed pickle juice with buttermilk for a hybrid soak that combined the best of both methods. The finished chicken carried just a whisper of pickle flavor, not enough to taste like pickles, but enough to make people ask what made it so good. The method showed how grandmothers found value in ingredients others considered waste, turning scraps into culinary secrets. Crisco fried chicken became popular in Black households during the 1960s when vegetable shortening offered a cleaner taste than traditional animal fats. The solid white shortening melted into clear oil that reached high temperatures without smoking, creating consistently crispy results. Mothers appreciated that Crisco was shelf-stable and didn't require the work of rendering lard from scratch. The neutral flavor let the seasoned flour coating shine without competing tastes. Each piece emerged from the oil with a light golden crust that stayed crisp even as the chicken cooled. The shortening could be strained and reused multiple times, making it economical for families who fried chicken regularly. Crisco represented modern convenience that made Sunday dinners easier while delivering satisfying crunch. Onion salt finish was applied right when chicken came out of the grease, while the crust was still glistening and hot enough to absorb seasoning. Grandmothers kept a shaker of onion salt by the stove, dusting each piece as it landed on the draining rack. The heat activated the onion flavor, and the salt adhered to the oily surface, creating an extra layer of seasoning that hit the tongue immediately. This technique solved the problem of coating that tasted bland, despite careful seasoning of the flour. The finish was light but noticeable, adding complexity without overwhelming the chicken itself. Some grandmothers made their own onion salt by grinding dried onion flakes with coarse salt. The result was chicken that tasted fully seasoned from first bite to last, with no disappointing blank spots where flavor failed to reach. Fried chitterlings were the bold expressions of soul food tradition, transforming pig intestines into something crispy and surprisingly delicious. After hours of cleaning and boiling, the chitterlings were cut into pieces, seasoned, dredged in flour, and fried until the exterior turned golden and crunchy. The texture inside was tender and chewy, carrying a distinctive flavor that divided opinions sharply. Families who served fried chitterlings did so with pride. Understanding this dish connected them to ancestors who transformed scraps into sustenance. Holiday gatherings featured chitterlings alongside familiar dishes, offering tradition for those who remembered and curiosity for younger generations. The cooking process filled homes with an unmistakable aroma announcing celebration. Pan drippings gravy started the moment fried chicken was lifted from the skillet, turning the leftover oil into liquid gold. Grandmothers poured off most of the frying oil but left the browned bits and a few tablespoons of fat in the pan. Flour was sprinkled in and stirred until it formed a paste that cooked until golden. Then milk was added slowly while stirring constantly. The gravy bubbled and thickened, picking up all the seasoned flavor from the chicken coating that had fallen into the oil. This gravy was poured over biscuits, rice, or the chicken itself, extending one dish into a complete meal. Nothing was wasted. The same pan that fried dinner became the vessel for its sauce. Children learned that good cooking meant seeing possibilities in what others might discard. Onion powder fried chicken added savory sweetness that rounded out the flavor profile of the seasoned coating. The dried onion blended into the flour, distributing evenly so every bite carried the same depth of taste. Mothers understood that onion powder offered convenience without the moisture that fresh onion would add, which could make the coating soggy. The flavor intensified during frying, developing the same caramelized sweetness that sautéed onions provided. Combined with garlic powder, the onion created an aromatic foundation that elevated the entire dish. Children who claimed to dislike onions ate this chicken without complaint, never realizing what made it taste so good. The powder dissolved into the coating, becoming invisible while contributing essential flavor that transformed ordinary into extraordinary. Crisco shortening fry produced chicken with a cleaner taste than lard, appealing to families who wanted traditional texture without heavy pork flavor. Grandmothers melted Crisco in cast iron until it shimmered, watching for the moment when a pinch of flour sizzled. Immediately upon contact, the vegetable shortening had a higher smoke point than butter and remained more stable than oil through multiple batches. Chicken fried in Crisco emerged with a lighter color and neutral taste that let the seasoning shine through. This was especially popular for families who kept kosher-style kitchens or simply preferred less richness. The shortening could be strained and reused several times, making it economical despite its modern convenience. Crisco also created less smoke than animal fats, keeping kitchens cleaner during long frying sessions. Fried chicken gizzards with gravy was Sunday dinner traditions, showcasing the soul food commitment to using every part of the bird. The gizzards were cleaned thoroughly, boiled until tender, then dredged in seasoned flour and fried until the coating turned deeply golden and crisp. Rich gravy was made from pan drippings, poured over rice or potatoes to soak up every drop. The texture was unique, chewy, but not tough, with concentrated poultry flavor the rest of the chicken could not match. Families stretched one bird into multiple meals by frying gizzards separately as their own dish. Elders often claimed gizzards for themselves, considering them a reward for preparing Sunday dinner. Served with hot sauce, fried gizzards represented economy and appreciation for ingredients others discarded. Lard render frying was how grandmothers achieved that impossibly golden crust with flavor vegetable oil could never match. The lard came from rendering pork fat saved from previous meals, strained clean and stored in jars until frying day arrived. Grandmothers heated lard slowly in heavy cast iron, testing temperature by dropping flour bits and watching how they bubbled. This fat created a crust that shattered on first bite while keeping meat perfectly moist inside. It added subtle richness that modern oils simply cannot replicate. Families who raised their own hogs had the freshest lard, but store-bought versions still outperformed anything else. The used lard was strained after frying and saved for the next batch, building layers of seasoned flavor over time. Church picnic fried chicken was prepared in massive quantities, with mothers waking before dawn to fry enough pieces to feed entire congregations. The chicken had to be perfect because it represented the family's reputation within the church community. Each woman had her signature approach, whether through seasoning, coating technique, or frying method. The pieces were arranged in large aluminum pans lined with paper towels to absorb excess oil. By the time services ended and families gathered outside on blankets, the chicken had cooled to ideal temperature for eating with hands. Children ran between groups, comparing whose mother made the best batch. The competition was friendly but real, with compliments treasured and recipes closely guarded. Church picnic fried chicken built community one piece at a time. Seasoned salt foundation was the building block of flavor when elaborate spice blends were unavailable or too expensive. Grandmothers relied on Lawry's or homemade versions, combining salt, paprika, garlic powder, and onion powder into one convenient ingredient. This single seasoning went into flour, onto raw chicken before dipping, and sometimes over-finished pieces still glistening from the fryer. Layered application meant flavor hit at every stage. Homemade seasoned salt allowed adjustments and personal touches like cayenne or dried herbs. Batches were mixed in large quantities and stored in repurposed jars. Children learned to shake the jar before measuring to redistribute settled spices. The convenience meant even busy weeknight dinners had properly flavored chicken. This approach produced consistent results families depended upon. Fried fatback cracklings were crispy treasures rendered from pure pork fat that became snacks, seasonings, and survival food all in one. The fatback was cut into cubes and fried slowly until fat melted away and what remained turned into golden, crunchy morsels that shattered between teeth. The cracklings carried intense pork flavor, eaten straight from the pan or crumbled into cornbread for texture. Families made these during hog killing season when every part of the pig was processed for months ahead. Children gathered around waiting for the first batch, burning tongues on pieces still glistening with hot grease. The rendered lard was saved for cooking. Throughout the year, fried fatback cracklings represented the complete use of resources that defined soul food traditions. Buttermilk fried chicken livers were the cook's reward, prepared alongside the main bird but eaten quietly in the kitchen before anyone arrived. The livers were soaked in buttermilk to mellow their mineral intensity, then dredged in the same seasoned flour used for chicken pieces. They fried quickly, becoming crispy outside while staying creamy and rich inside with concentrated flavor. Grandmothers often ate these standing at the stove between batches, a private indulgence that children rarely witnessed. The livers were considered too strong for young palates and too precious to share widely. Those who acquired the taste considered them the best part of the bird, worth the extra effort. This tradition showed how grandmothers found moments of pleasure within the labor of feeding families, turning kitchen work into quiet celebration. Self-rising, flour-fried chicken used the leavening already in the flour to create a slightly puffier, more tender coating. The baking powder and salt built into self-rising flour meant mothers needed fewer separate ingredients while still achieving excellent results. When the coated chicken hit the hot oil, the leavening created tiny air pockets in the crust that made it lighter than regular flour coating. The texture was less dense, almost biscuit-like in its tender crunch. Some families swore by this method, while others insisted that all-purpose flour produced the proper crispy shell. The debate between the two approaches divided households and communities, with each side convinced their way was correct. Self-rising, flour-fried chicken represented kitchen innovation, using modern convenience products to streamline traditional recipes. Paprika-colored secret-made chicken looked professionally fried, even when cooked in home kitchens with imperfect temperature control. Grandmothers added generous sweet paprika to their flour, knowing it contributed more color than flavor, but understanding appearance mattered. The paprika turned coating a deep, rusty gold that photographed beautifully and made mouths water before the first bite. This trick compensated for grease that ran too cool or chicken that needed extra time under the lid. Some grandmothers used smoked paprika for depth, while others preferred bright Hungarian variety. The secret was in quantity, enough to tint the coating without making it taste dusty. Children often believed their grandmother's chicken was better simply because it looked better. That psychological advantage was as real as any flavor enhancement. Fried peach ham pies were summer treasures that turned ripe fruit into portable packages of golden flaky comfort. Fresh peaches were peeled, sliced, and cooked down with sugar and spices until they became thick, filling, tucked inside rounds of homemade dough. The pies were sealed carefully, then lowered into hot oil where crust fried crispy while filling bubbled inside. Families made these during peach season, when trees produced more fruit than could be eaten fresh. The pies traveled well to church gatherings and work sites where handheld treats provided midday comfort. Children often helped with crimping edges, learning kitchen skills through participation. Glazed with sugar while warm, fried peach hand pies carried Southern summers in every bite. Cayenne kick variation added serious heat that made certain family recipes famous within their communities and beyond. While most grandmothers used cayenne sparingly, some built their reputation on chicken that made eyes water and lips tingle with every bite. The cayenne was mixed into the flour blend and sometimes added to the buttermilk soak for double penetration of heat throughout the meat. This style required careful balance, enough fire to excite, but not so much that flavor was lost beneath burning. Families known for spicy chicken attracted specific crowds at gatherings, people who sought that particular thrill. Children raised on cayenne-heavy chicken developed tolerance early, finding mild versions disappointing. The heat also helped preserve the chicken slightly longer, the capsaicin acting as natural antimicrobial. Egg wash fried chicken created an extra layer between the meat and the flour coating, resulting in a thicker crust that stayed attached during frying. Mothers would beat eggs with a splash of milk or water, then dip the chicken pieces before dredging them in seasoned flour. The egg acted as glue, binding the flour tightly to the meat so nothing fell away in the hot oil. The extra protein from the egg also contributed to browning, giving the chicken a richer golden color. Some families used egg wash as part of a double dipping process, creating coating so thick it could stand on its own. The technique required more preparation, but delivered results that made the extra effort worthwhile. Children learned to crack eggs and whisk them smooth, participating in the process of creating dinner. Egg wash adhesion was the secret for chicken that kept its coating through frying, resting, and even reheating the next day. Grandmothers beat eggs with a splash of buttermilk and dipped chicken pieces before the flour coating, creating a sticky base layer that grabbed and held. The proteins in the egg set quickly in hot grease, forming a seal between meat and crust that prevented separation. This technique was especially important for wing pieces and drumsticks, where coating tended to slide. Some grandmothers added mustard or hot sauce to the egg wash for extra flavor. The result was chicken, where every bite included both meat and crust in proper proportion. Nothing was more disappointing than beautiful golden coating that fell off when you picked up the piece. An egg wash prevented that heartbreak entirely. Fried sweet potato rounds were simple treats that turned humble roots into crispy, caramelized coins of sweetness. Sweet potatoes were peeled and sliced into thick rounds, dredged lightly in flour mixed with cinnamon and sugar, then fried until edges caramelized and centers softened. The natural sugars intensified with heat, creating candy-like sweetness balanced by slight bitterness of browned edges. Families made these when sweet potato harvest filled root cellars with more than could be baked or mashed. The rounds were served as side dishes, snacks, or simple desserts when resources were limited. Children especially loved them, eating them like cookies, while adults appreciated their practicality. Fried sweet potato rounds proved simple preparations create memorable flavors. Reverend's plate was the special portion assembled for visiting ministers who dined with families after Sunday service. This plate featured the best pieces: the breast, the largest thigh, the most perfectly fried drumstick, arranged with obvious intention and care. Grandmothers considered feeding the Reverend both honor and obligation, proof of household prosperity and cooking skill. Children understood these pieces were off limits, reserved for the guest whose blessings seemed to make the meal official. The reverence plate tradition extended to any honored guest, making certain people feel special through food selection. This practice taught children about hospitality, about saving the best for guests rather than claiming it themselves. The tradition showed how fried chicken carries social meaning beyond simple nourishment. Paprika dusted fried chicken carried a beautiful reddish golden color that made every piece look as good as it tasted. Beyond appearance, paprika added a subtle sweetness and earthy warmth that balanced the salt and pepper in the coating. Black mothers in the 1960s understood that eating began with the eyes, and paprika-dusted chicken looked more appetizing than plain golden pieces. The spice was mixed directly into the seasoned flour, ensuring even distribution across every coated surface. When fried, the paprika deepened in color, creating that distinctive reddish hue associated with soul food fried chicken. Some cooks used sweet paprika, while others preferred smoked varieties for additional depth. The visual appeal made this chicken a centerpiece at gatherings, drawing compliments before anyone took a bite. Cornmeal crunch coating added texture that flour alone could never achieve. Grandmothers mixed fine yellow cornmeal into seasoned flour, usually 1 part cornmeal to 3 parts flour, creating a coating with grit and character. The cornmeal fried up harder than flour, producing a shell that audibly cracked when you bit through. This technique was popular in rural areas where cornmeal was cheaper than wheat flour. The coating held up better when chicken sat waiting to be served, staying crisp long after plain flour coatings turned soft. Some grandmothers added a pinch of sugar to the mix, which caramelized in hot grease and deepened the golden color. The result was chicken with a rustic, almost gritty texture that felt substantial and satisfying in ways smooth coatings never matched. Fried chicken feet were testament to the soul food commitment that nothing from the bird should ever go to waste. The feet were cleaned meticulously, boiled until tender, then seasoned and fried until skin turned crispy while the interior stayed gelatinous. The texture was unique, combining crunch with silkiness, requiring adventurous eaters willing to gnaw around small bones. Families who raised chickens saved the feet specifically for frying, understanding their value when others might discard them. The collagen-rich feet were considered nourishing, good for joints according to kitchen wisdom passed through generations. Children who grew up eating chicken feet developed appreciation for textures others found challenging. Fried chicken feet carried cultural pride and connection to ancestors. Pressure cooker fried chicken was the weeknight secret that delivered tender meat in half the time of traditional methods. Grandmothers who worked outside the home relied on heavy aluminum pressure cookers that could fry chicken in under 20 minutes. The chicken was coated and placed in hot oil inside the sealed cooker where steam and pressure worked together to cook meat through while the exterior crisped. The result was impossibly juicy chicken with a crust that stayed crispy longer than conventional versions. This method required confidence because the equipment was dangerous if mishandled, but experienced cooks moved with practiced ease. The pressure cooker allowed dinner to reach the table before children finished homework, proving good fried chicken did not require hours over hot oil. Buttermilk-soaked fried chicken was the foundation of Sunday dinners in Black households across the South during the 1960s. The secret began the night before when chicken pieces were submerged in cold buttermilk and left to rest until morning. The buttermilk's natural acidity tenderized the meat while infusing it with tangy flavor that no commercial brine could match. Mothers passed this knowledge to daughters, teaching them that patience was the first ingredient in perfect fried chicken. The soaking helped the seasoned flour cling tightly, creating a crust that shattered with every bite. When the chicken hit the hot oil, the buttermilk created steam pockets that made the coating impossibly crispy. Children could smell it frying from the front porch, knowing dinner would be worth the wait. Chicken back and neck pieces were the cook's reward, eaten standing at the stove while the pretty pieces went to the table. Grandmothers bought whole chickens and cut them up at home, saving these bony sections that butchers often threw away. The backs and necks fried up crunchy with small pockets of meat that required picking, making them unsuitable for formal serving, but perfect for kitchen snacking. These pieces also tested the grease temperature and seasoning before committing expensive thighs and breasts. Children learned to hover nearby, hoping for a taste before everything was plated. The bones added flavor to the drippings, which grandmothers saved for gravy. Nothing was wasted, and the cook who did all the work deserved something for herself. These humble pieces carried more flavor per ounce than any breast meat ever could. Fried frog legs were delicacies that appeared on African American tables in communities near swamps, rivers, and bayous throughout the South. The legs were cleaned, soaked in buttermilk, seasoned, dredged in flour, and fried until the coating turned golden, while the tender meat inside stayed moist and mild. The flavor was delicate, often compared to chicken, but lighter, with a sweetness unique to fresh-caught frogs. Families who lived near water caught frogs at night using flashlights and quick hands, turning evening hunts into adventures that ended with morning feasts. The legs were considered special occasion food, served at gatherings where their presence signaled abundance. Children who grew up eating frog legs developed appreciation for flavors others might never experience. Cold chicken breakfast was how leftover fried chicken found its highest purpose the morning after frying day. The chicken was pulled from the icebox and eaten cold, straight from the hand, with the coating now dense and the meat firm but flavorful. Some families considered cold fried chicken superior to hot, the flavors having melded overnight into something more complex. Children grabbed pieces before school, eating over the sink to avoid crumbs on church clothes. The cold coating had a different texture, less shattering crunch, but more concentrated flavor in every bite. Grandmothers planned for this, frying extra pieces specifically so morning leftovers would be plentiful. This tradition proved that good fried chicken was designed to last beyond a single meal, nourishing families across multiple sittings. Cornmeal crusted fried chicken offered a different texture than flour-coated versions, with a grittier crunch that some families preferred. The cornmeal was often stone ground, giving the coating a rustic character that connected to older Southern traditions. Mothers mixed the cornmeal with flour in varying proportions, some preferring half and half, while others used mostly cornmeal with just enough flour to help it adhere. The coating fried to a deeper golden color than pure flour and held its crispness longer, even as the chicken cooled. The slight sweetness of the corn complemented the savory seasoning, creating a flavor profile that was distinctly Southern. Children grew up believing this was how all fried chicken should taste. Cornmeal-crusted chicken represented regional pride and agricultural heritage. Fried fatback cracklings were crispy treasures rendered from pure pork fat that became snacks, seasonings, and survival food all in one. The fatback was cut into cubes and fried slowly until fat melted away, and what remained turned into golden, crunchy morsels that shattered between teeth. The cracklings carried intense pork flavor, eaten straight from the pan or crumbled into cornbread for texture. Families made these during hog killing season when every part of the pig was processed for months ahead. Children gathered around waiting for the first batch, burning tongues on pieces still glistening with hot grease. The rendered lard was saved for cooking. Throughout the year, fried fatback cracklings represented the complete use of resources that defined soul food traditions. Cornmeal crusted variation created a grittier, more rustic coating that crunched differently than pure flour versions. The dredging mixture combined fine cornmeal with flour in ratios that varied by household, some preferring half and half, others using just a quarter cornmeal. The corn added subtle sweetness and golden color that darkened beautifully during frying, creating a crust with more tooth and texture. This variation was common in rural areas where cornmeal was more affordable than refined wheat flour. The coating held up better for packed lunches and picnics, staying crispy longer without absorbing moisture. Some grandmothers toasted cornmeal before mixing to deepen flavor. The technique connected fried chicken to cornbread, tying together two southern pillars. Lard fried chicken delivered a richness and crispiness that vegetable oil simply could not achieve. During the 1960s, most black households rendered their own lard from pork fat, keeping jars of the white solid stored in cool pantries for cooking. When heated, lard reached higher temperatures without smoking, creating an environment where chicken cooked quickly on the outside while staying juicy inside. The flavor it imparted was subtle but unmistakable, adding a savory depth that complemented the seasoned flour coating. Mothers knew that lard produced a lighter, crispier crust than other fats, with a texture that stayed crunchy for hours. Children would sneak pieces from the cooling rack, burning their fingers but unable to resist. Lard fried chicken tasted like heritage and love combined. Fried green tomatoes were clever solutions when frost threatened gardens before everything could ripen. The firm, tart tomatoes were sliced thick, dipped in buttermilk, dredged in cornmeal, then fried until coating turned golden and crisp. The tomato inside softened slightly while retaining its tangy bite, creating flavor unlike anything ripe tomatoes offered. Families served them as side dishes, appetizers, or layered in sandwiches where their tartness cut through richer flavors. The dish appeared at Sunday dinners and weeknight suppers alike, equally at home on formal tables and kitchen counters. Children who grew up eating fried green tomatoes often preferred them to ripe versions, craving that crispy coating and tangy center. This was resourcefulness transformed into tradition. Bacon drippings, frying added smoky depth that transformed ordinary fried chicken into something unforgettable. Grandmothers saved bacon grease in coffee cans near the stove, collecting drippings from countless breakfasts until enough accumulated. The bacon fat was mixed with lard or oil to raise the smoke point while preserving distinctive flavor. Chicken fried in this blend carries subtle smokiness in every bite without tasting overwhelmingly like bacon. Some grandmothers kept separate cans, one for seasoned drippings used with vegetables, another cleaner batch reserved strictly for chicken. The practice connected breakfast to dinner, waste prevention to flavor creation, stretching expensive cooking fats while adding complexity that pure oil could never achieve. Over fried chicken sandwiches transformed yesterday's dinner into today's lunch, proving that cold fried chicken had its own particular magic. The chicken was sliced or pulled apart and placed between soft white bread with mayonnaise, pickles, and sometimes a leaf of lettuce. The coating had softened overnight, but still provided texture against the tender meat. Some families reheated the chicken briefly in a skillet to restore crispness, while others preferred it cold straight from the refrigerator. The sandwich was portable, wrapped in wax paper for lunches, packed in tin boxes or brown bags. Children traded these sandwiches at school, knowing they held more value than store-bought alternatives. Leftover fried chicken sandwiches honored the philosophy that good food deserved to be enjoyed twice. Celery salt accent added an unexpected savory note that elevated fried chicken from simple to sophisticated. Grandmothers who used this seasoning understood that celery salt contributed umami depth without announcing its presence. A teaspoon or two went into the flour coating, mixing with other spices to create complexity tasters could not identify. The celery flavor was subtle, more of a background note that made chicken taste fuller and more satisfying. This technique was popular among grandmothers who had worked in restaurants or learned from professional cooks. The salt component meant less regular salt was needed, and the celery seed added tiny bursts of herbal flavor throughout the crust. Children grew up loving this chicken without knowing what made it special, and that mystery was part of the magic grandmothers cultivated. Fried liver and onions was weeknight supper that delivered iron-rich nutrition wrapped in crispy coating and sweet caramelized onions. The liver was sliced thin, soaked in milk to mellow its mineral flavor, then seasoned, dredged in flour, and fried quickly until just cooked through. Onions were fried separately until golden and sweet, piled on top in fragrant heaps. The combination balanced liver's richness with onion sweetness, creating a dish that converted skeptics into believers. Families served this when budgets were tight, knowing liver provided essential nutrition at minimal cost. Children often resisted until that first properly prepared bite changed minds. The dish appeared with the rice or potatoes, onions creating natural gravy. Fried liver proved humble ingredients could deliver satisfaction. Self-rising flour coating created a lighter, slightly puffier crust that some families preferred over dense traditional versions. The leavening already mixed into the flour caused tiny air pockets to form during frying, resulting in coating that felt almost tempura-like in its delicacy. Grandmothers who used this method often added less seasoning because self-rising flour already contained salt. The coating fried faster and absorbed less oil, making the finished chicken feel lighter. This variation was particularly popular in regions where self-rising flour dominated pantries. The lighter crust let chicken's natural flavor come through more clearly, appealing to those who found traditional coatings too thick. Some families kept both methods in rotation, using self-rising flour for everyday meals and double dredge for occasions. Oven-finished fried chicken started in hot oil, then moved to the oven to cook through without burning the coating. This two-step method allowed mothers to achieve deep golden color on the stovetop before letting the oven's gentle heat finish the job. The technique was especially useful for larger pieces like breasts that needed more time to cook through completely. By transferring the chicken to a baking sheet, the coating stayed crispy on all sides instead of getting soggy where it rested against the pan. The oven's even heat meant no constant monitoring was required, freeing mothers to prepare side dishes or set the table. This practical approach combined the best of frying and baking, delivering restaurant-quality results with home kitchen equipment. Oven-finished chicken showed that smart technique could solve common cooking problems. Vinegar splash tenderizer was the quick fix when there was no time for overnight soaking, but tough chicken still needed help. Grandmothers splashed apple cider or white vinegar directly onto chicken pieces an hour before frying, letting acid work fast to break down muscle fibers. The vinegar evaporated during frying, leaving tender meat without sour taste. This technique saved many a rushed Sunday dinner when the preacher announced he was coming and chicken was still frozen. The acidity also helped flour coating adhere better than it would to plain wet chicken. Some grandmothers combined vinegar with salt and sugar, creating a quick brine that penetrated faster than buttermilk. This was an emergency technique passed between women who understood that good chicken was always necessary. Fried Spam slices were resourceful meals that turned canned meat into something crispy and satisfying when fresh options were limited. The Spam was sliced thick, then fried in a hot skillet until the exterior caramelized and developed crispy edges while the center stayed tender. The flavor was salty and slightly sweet from caramelization, transformed from canned softness into something with appealing texture. Families kept Spam in pantries because it required no refrigeration and lasted indefinitely. The fried slices were served with eggs for breakfast, tucked into sandwiches for lunch, or eaten alongside rice for dinner. Children often preferred fried Spam to fresh pork because of its familiar flavor. This was practical food that sustained communities through uncertain times. Onion powder, heavy blend, created a sweeter, more aromatic coating that distinguished some family recipes from others in the community. While most grandmothers used onion powder sparingly, some made it a dominant note in their seasoning mix that set their chicken apart. The powder caramelized slightly during frying, adding depth that straight salt and pepper could not achieve on their own. This variation was particularly common in families with roots in regions where onion-forward cooking was tradition. Children raised on this style often found other fried chicken bland by comparison, their palates trained to expect that subtle sweetness. The onion powder also helped coating brown more evenly, contributing to both flavor and appearance. Some grandmothers combined onion powder with dried onion flakes for texture variation. Pan-fried chicken thighs were the weeknight answer to labor-intensive deep frying, cooking faster while staying incredibly juicy. Thighs were preferred because their higher fat content meant they stayed moist even with shorter cooking times. Mothers would heat just enough oil to come halfway up the chicken pieces, flipping them once to brown both sides evenly. The technique used less oil than deep frying, making it more economical and easier to manage on busy evenings. The skin crisped beautifully where it touched the hot pan while the meat stayed tender beneath. Some cooks covered the pan partway through to ensure the thickest parts cooked through without burning the exterior. Pan-fried thighs delivered the satisfaction of fried chicken with half the effort, perfect for nights when time was short. Sugar in the flour was the secret ingredient that made fried chicken crust turn that perfect shade of deep golden brown. Grandmothers added a tablespoon or two of white sugar to seasoned flour, knowing it would caramelize in hot grease and create color that plain flour could never achieve. The sugar also balanced salt and spices, rounding out flavors that might otherwise taste harsh. Children never knew why grandmother's chicken looked more beautiful than anyone else's, and the secret stayed hidden. The sweetness was not detectable in the finished product, transformed entirely into color and subtle depth. This trick worked especially well when frying at lower temperatures where plain flour might stay pale. The sugar ensured every piece emerged, looking like it belonged in a photograph, golden and inviting. Fried fish roe was a springtime tradition that brought excitement to African American tables when rivers ran full and fish were spawning. The roe sacks were carefully extracted, rinsed gently, and seasoned with salt and pepper before being dredged in cornmeal and lowered into sizzling lard. The coating turned crispy while the roe inside became firm yet slightly creamy, offering briny richness unlike anything else. Families near rivers considered this a seasonal treasure available only during spawning months. Children learned to appreciate its unique texture, watching elders prepare it with reverence passed through generations. Fried fish roe was often served alongside grits and eggs for breakfast, turning morning meals into something special. Crackling crumble, coating incorporated crushed pork cracklings into the flour dredge for extra richness and texture. The cracklings were pounded fine with a rolling pin or the bottom of a heavy pan, then mixed with seasoned flour before coating. This addition brought smoky pork flavor and an extra layer of crunch that regular flour could not provide. The technique used cracklings left over from rendering lard, ensuring nothing from the pig went to waste. The coating fried darker than plain flour and developed an almost bacon-like quality that made people reach for second helpings. Grandmothers who kept their own hogs had steady supplies of cracklings, while others saved them from occasional lard purchases. The method was rich beyond measure, but reserved for times when indulgence was deserved and celebrated. Chicken wings with hot sauce glaze became party food before buffalo wings existed, with Black mothers creating their own spicy glazed versions. The wings were fried until crispy, then tossed in a mixture of melted butter and hot sauce that coated every surface. The butter mellowed the heat while helping the sauce cling to the crispy skin. These wings were finger food meant for gatherings, served in big bowls with plenty of napkins nearby. Children sneaked pieces from the kitchen before the guests arrived, learning early that the crispy tips were the best part. The glaze could be adjusted for heat level, making wings mild enough for children or fiery enough to challenge adults. Hot sauce glazed wings represented the ingenuity of creating celebration food from the cheapest chicken parts available. Crowding prevention method ensured every piece fried properly by giving each one space to cook in peace. Grandmothers never put more than 4 or 5 pieces in even the largest skillet, understanding that crowded chicken steamed rather than fried. The grease temperature dropped when too much cold chicken entered at once, turning crispy coating dreams into soggy disappointments. Pieces needed room for oil to circulate around, them cooking evenly on all surfaces. This patience was difficult when hungry families waited, but grandmothers held firm. Better to fry in batches and serve hot than to rush and serve mediocre chicken. The space between pieces also prevented coatings from sticking together and tearing when separated. This discipline separated great fried chicken cooks from those who produced acceptable but forgettable results. Fried porgies were coastal treasures that brought the taste of the Atlantic to African American tables throughout the Southeast. These small, bony fish were cleaned whole, scored along the sides, seasoned generously, then dredged in cornmeal and fried until skin turned crispy while flesh stayed moist and sweet. Eating them required skill, picking around tiny bones, but those who grew up with porgies considered the effort worthwhile. Families near the coast caught them fresh, while inland communities bought from vendors traveling through neighborhoods. Fried porgies were Friday night suppers, fish fry centerpieces, and weeknight meals when budgets were tight. The entire fish was edible for those willing to crunch through crispy fins and tails. Buttermilk overnight soak was the foundation that separated amateur fried chicken from the real thing. Chicken pieces were submerged in thick buttermilk mixed with salt and sometimes hot sauce, then covered and left in the icebox overnight. The acid in buttermilk broke down tough muscle fibers, while salt penetrated deep into the meat. The result was chicken that stayed tender and juicy even after high heat frying. Some grandmothers added a beaten egg to help coating stick better, while others swore by soaking for 2 full days. The soak seasoned meat from within, meaning every bite carried flavor instead of just the crust. Children never witnessed this step because it happened late at night, making the final product seem like pure kitchen magic. Saltine cracker-crusted fried chicken used crushed crackers to create an unusually light and crispy coating that shattered with each bite. Mothers would crush saltines into fine crumbs, sometimes mixing them with flour and seasonings to help the coating adhere. The crackers provided a different texture than traditional flour coating, with a more delicate crunch that melted on the tongue. Children often helped with the crushing, using rolling pins to reduce the crackers to powder. The salt already in the crackers meant less additional seasoning was needed, and the wheat flavor added subtle complexity. This technique was especially popular when flour supplies ran low or when cooks wanted something different from the usual dinner. Saltine crusted chicken represented the creativity that defined resourceful kitchens. Grease temperature testing separated confident cooks from those who ruined batch after batch with burned coating or raw centers. Grandmothers without thermometers learned to read the grease by watching and listening. A wooden spoon dipped into hot fat should produce immediate tiny bubbles around the submerged portion. A pinch of flour dropped in should sizzle and brown within seconds without burning. The surface should shimmer with heat waves, but not smoke. Chicken dropped into properly heated grease sang with steady sizzle, while too cool oil gurgled quietly and too hot oil roared and spattered. This knowledge came through failure and practice, through chickens that disappointed and lessons remembered. The skill was more reliable than any thermometer because it engaged all senses and responded to real conditions. Flour dredging methods in 1960s soul food kitchens went far beyond simple coating techniques. Cooks understood that the odd way flour adhered to meat determined the entire texture of the finished crust. The process began with patting proteins completely dry, as any moisture created steam pockets, preventing adhesion. Flour was seasoned heavily with salt, pepper, and paprika, then spread across shallow pans, allowing pieces to turn without crowding. The dredging motion was deliberate, pressing flour firmly into every crevice before shaking off excess with controlled wrist flicks. Many cooks double-dredged, returning pieces to flour after brief rests to build thicker crusts. Some families kept dedicated dredging flour that accumulated seasoning over multiple uses. These methods produced crusts that shattered while clinging to moist meat beneath. Overnight rest after coating was the patient step that separated good fried chicken from great. After dredging in seasoned flour, coated pieces were placed on wire racks and refrigerated uncovered for several hours or overnight. During this time, the coating dried slightly and bonded firmly with the chicken's surface. When fried, this rested coating crisped better and stayed attached instead of sliding off in the oil. The method required planning ahead, but rewarded patience with superior texture. Grandmothers who practiced this treated fried chicken as an event rather than a quick meal. The rested coating also absorbed less oil during frying, resulting in lighter chicken. This step of patience made the difference between everyday cooking and something memorable. Mustard marinated fried chicken used yellow mustard to tenderize the meat and add tangy depth beneath the crispy coating. The chicken soaked in mustard for several hours, the vinegar and spices penetrating the meat while the bright yellow color stained every surface. When coated and fried, The mustard flavor mellowed into something subtle but distinctive, creating chicken that tasted different from any other version. Some mothers mixed the mustard with hot sauce or pickle juice for additional complexity. The technique was practical because mustard was cheap and always available in the pantry. The acid in the mustard worked like buttermilk to tenderize tough birds, making even older chickens suitable for frying. Mustard marinated chicken proved that everyday condiments could become secret weapons in skilled hands. Leftover mustard rub base created a flavor foundation that buttermilk alone could not provide. Grandmothers spread yellow mustard directly onto raw chicken pieces before the soak, using it like a seasoning paste that penetrated deep into the meat. The mustard's vinegar tenderized, while its spices added complexity that emerged subtly in the finished chicken. This technique was common in the Carolinas, where mustard-based sauces dominated barbecue culture and crossed into fried chicken traditions. The mustard helped buttermilk adhere and created an extra sticky layer for flour coating. The finished chicken carried no obvious mustard taste, just depth and tang that people noticed without identifying. This was the kind of secret grandmothers shared only with favorite daughters-in-law, ensuring the technique stayed within trusted family lines. Fried pork rinds were crunchy snacks made from pig skin that puffed into airy, salty bites when dropped into hot oil. The skin was first boiled to remove fat, dried thoroughly, then fried at high temperature where it expanded dramatically into light, crispy curls. The flavor was intensely porky and salty, satisfying cravings for crunch without the heaviness of other fried foods. Families made these during hog killing season, wasting nothing from the animal that sustained them through winter. The rinds kept well in jars, providing snacks for weeks after preparation. Children loved them for their satisfying crunch, while adults appreciated them with cold drinks and conversation. Fried pork rinds represented resourcefulness, turning what might be discarded into something beloved and delicious. Sunday dinner bird was fried chicken, prepared with extra care for the most important meal of the week when family gathered together. These chickens were often fresher, purchased Saturday morning from butchers or farmers markets rather than from grocery store freezers. The soaking time was extended, the seasoning more generous, and the frying more attentive than weeknight versions received. Sunday chicken was arranged on platters rather than piled in baskets, presented as the centerpiece that brought extended family together. The cook wore her good apron and accepted compliments with practiced humility while knowing exactly how much skill went into every piece. Children learned that Sunday dinner was different, that some meals carried more weight than others. This chicken represented love made visible through extra effort and attention. Country fried chicken with white gravy covered crispy pieces and creamy pepper-flecked sauce that turned the dish into pure comfort. The gravy was made in the same skillet after frying, using the browned bits and remaining oil as the flavor foundation. Flour was whisked in until it formed a paste, then milk was added slowly while stirring constantly until the gravy thickened. Heavy doses of black pepper gave the white gravy its distinctive speckled appearance and gentle heat. The chicken was served swimming in the gravy or with it ladled generously on top. Mashed potatoes and biscuits completed the plate, creating a meal that satisfied completely. Country fried chicken with gravy stretched the meal further while adding richness that made every bite feel like an occasion. Draining on brown paper kept fried chicken crispy by wicking away excess grease faster than paper towels or wire racks. Grandmothers saved brown grocery bags and cut them flat, laying pieces of fresh fried chicken directly on the unprinted side. The paper absorbed oil immediately, pulling it away from the crust before it could soften the coating. This technique was superior to paper towels, which sometimes stuck to the chicken and left white fibers behind. The brown paper also kept chicken warmer than wire racks, which allowed air circulation that cooled pieces too quickly. After draining for a minute or two, the chicken was transferred to a serving platter where it stayed crisp for the journey to the table. This simple step made the difference between chicken that shattered and chicken that turned limp before anyone could take a bite. Fried hush puppies were essential companions to every fish fry, golden cornmeal balls emerging from the same oil as the fish they accompanied. The batter was simple, combining cornmeal, flour, egg, buttermilk, and finely chopped onion, then dropped by spoonfuls into hot oil where they puffed and browned into irregular spheres. The exterior turned crispy while the interior stayed soft and slightly sweet, the onion adding subtle depth that distinguished them from plain cornbread. Legend said they got their name from cooks tossing them to barking dogs with the command to hush, though families cared more about eating them than debating origins. Hush puppies were served hot, piled on platters alongside fried fish, passed around until they disappeared. They were never fancy, but they were always essential. Gizzard and heart frying turned organ meats into crispy treats that divided families into those who loved them and those who refused to try. The gizzards were cleaned thoroughly, sliced thin, and fried until crackling crisp throughout with concentrated flavor. Hearts were left whole or halved, developing chewy texture with intensely concentrated poultry flavor in every single bite. These pieces required longer cooking than regular chicken because the dense muscle needed extra time to tenderize properly. Grandmothers who fried organs often had devoted fans who requested them specifically at family gatherings. The organs were also economical, costing far less than breast or thigh meat while providing substantial protein. This tradition connected to older foodways where waste was unthinkable and every edible part found its way to the table. Second day, reheating secret restored leftover fried chicken to almost fresh crispiness using the oven instead of the microwave. Grandmothers knew that microwave chicken turned rubbery, the crust softening into something unrecognizable. Instead, cold chicken was placed on a wire rack over a baking sheet and heated in a hot oven until coating crisped again. The wire rack was essential, allowing air to circulate underneath and prevent the bottom from getting soggy. Some grandmothers brushed pieces lightly with melted butter before reheating, which helped crust re-crisp. The chicken emerged almost as good as fresh, with crust that crackled and meat that stayed juicy. This technique meant Sunday's chicken could become Monday's lunch without shame, extending the value of weekend effort into another delicious meal. Fried blackberry ham pies were summer treasures that transformed forage berries into portable packages of sweet, flaky comfort. Wild blackberries were gathered from roadsides and fence lines, cooked with sugar until thick, then tucked inside rounds of dough and sealed. The pies were lowered into hot oil where crust fried crispy while filling bubbled inside, berry juice occasionally bursting through in purple streams. Families made these when bushes hung heavy with ripe berries that stained fingers during picking. The pies traveled well to church gatherings where they disappeared quickly from serving plates. Children helped with picking, earning their share through scratched arms and purple-stained hands. Fried blackberry pies captured summer in every bite. Neck and back pieces were the economy cuts that fed families when whole chickens stretched thin across too many hungry mouths at the table. These bony pieces were fried alongside premium cuts, but claimed by adults who left drumsticks and thighs for children. The meat was harder to eat, requiring patient work to pull from bones, but the flavor was concentrated and rich with every small bite. Grandmothers often ate these pieces themselves, insisting they preferred them while ensuring children got the easier portions. The backs especially held hidden pockets of tender meat that rewarded those who knew where to find them. This tradition taught that every part of the chicken had value and that parental sacrifice often wore the disguise of preference. Nothing was wasted and love was shown through giving the best away. Grandmother's secret recipe fried chicken carried techniques and proportions that were never written down but passed through generations by watching and doing. Each family believed their grandmother's version was superior, though the recipes varied widely from kitchen to kitchen. The secrets might involve particular spice combinations, specific soaking times, or techniques for achieving the perfect crust. Young women learned by standing beside their grandmothers, absorbing knowledge through observation. The recipes connected generations, with each batch of fried chicken honoring those who came before. These unwritten formulas represented cultural wealth that couldn't be replicated by restaurants. Grandmother's fried chicken was more than food. It was legacy served hot, carrying love and history in every bite.
Buttermilk sky biscuits were Christmas morning tradition, tall and fluffy and buttery enough to make store-bought rolls irrelevant. Black mothers made these before sunrise using self-rising flour, buttermilk, and cold butter cut into pea-sized pieces, never melted, because that destroyed flakiness. The secret was handling the dough minimally, folding it exactly 3 times to create layers without developing gluten. Some grandmothers used white lily flour specifically, swearing nothing else produced the same tenderness. The shaped biscuits were placed touching in cast iron skillets, so sides stayed soft while tops and bottoms crisped. Before baking, each was brushed with melted butter mixed with honey, not enough to make them sweet, just enough to create a golden glaze. They baked until risen to twice their height, then were brushed with more honey butter while hot. The recipe stayed secret because perfect biscuits required technique more than ingredients.
Fried chicken livers were treasured delicacies in African American kitchens during the 1960s and 70s, prized for their rich flavor and economical value. Cooks would rinse the livers, pat them dry, then dredge them in seasoned flour with paprika and cayenne before lowering them into hot oil. The exterior turned golden and crispy, while the inside stayed creamy, creating contrast that made every bite memorable. Families served them at gatherings and packed them for workers heading to factories. The livers were affordable because butchers sold them cheaply or included them free with whole chickens. Served with hot sauce and white bread, fried chicken livers represented thrift and resourcefulness that defines soul food cooking. Seasoned salt-fried chicken relied on the popular all-purpose seasoning that appeared in black kitchens during the 1960s. The seasoned salt combined multiple spices in one convenient shaker, eliminating the need to measure individual ingredients. Mothers mixed it into the flour for the coating or sprinkled it directly onto the chicken before dredging. The blend typically included salt, paprika, onion, garlic, and other spices that created complex flavor with minimal effort. Some families became loyal to particular brands, insisting their version produced the best results. The convenience allowed fried chicken to happen on weeknights when time for elaborate seasoning wasn't available. Seasoned salt-fried chicken represented the embrace of modern shortcuts that still delivered traditional satisfaction. Fried peanuts were crunchy snacks that transformed raw legumes into salty golden treats, perfect for gatherings and quiet evenings. Raw peanuts were dropped into hot oil and fried until they turned deep golden and developed satisfying crunch throughout. The flavor was nuttier and richer than roasted versions, with slight sweetness from caramelization that made them irresistible. Families in peanut-growing regions made these during harvest when fresh nuts were abundant. The fried peanuts were salted while hot, crystals clinging to the oily surface. Children gathered around waiting for them to cool, burning fingertips in eagerness. Fried peanuts were simple pleasures that brought people together, shared from bowls, while stories were told and memories made. Fried sweet potato pies were portable treasures that turned holiday flavors into handheld treats perfect for church socials. Cooks prepared spiced sweet potato filling, tucked it inside rounds of homemade dough, then sealed the edges before lowering them into hot oil. The crust fried golden and flaky, while filling stayed warm and creamy, creating packages of comfort eaten without plates or forks. These hand pies appeared at revivals, picnics, and homecomings where food needed to travel well. The filling used beloved spices, including cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla that perfumed the air. Children loved these because they could eat while playing without returning to the table. Fried sweet potato pies was celebration food made practical, bringing holiday warmth to everyday occasions.
Ham biscuits made with country ham and soft dinner rolls became handheld sandwiches that children devoured, the salty ham contrasting perfectly with the sweet, buttery rolls that held everything together. Mothers would slice country ham paper thin, the intensely salty, cured meat packed with flavor that needed only small amounts to satisfy. Then tuck the slices into soft dinner rolls that had been split and buttered. Some families brushed the tops of the assembled biscuits with melted butter and baked them briefly to warm everything through and create slightly crispy tops. The combination of salty, savory ham with soft, slightly sweet rolls created perfect flavor balance that kept people coming back for more. In 1970s Black households, ham biscuits represented Southern tradition, appetizers that could be prepared ahead and served at room temperature. Children loved ham biscuits because they were familiar comfort food in easy-to-eat form, requiring no plates or utensils and perfect for grabbing.
Buttermilk soaking was a transformative technique that tenderized tough proteins while creating superior coating adhesion. African American cooks discovered that acid in buttermilk broke down muscle fibers in chicken and pork, producing remarkably tender results after frying. Soaking time varied by protein, with chicken often submerged overnight while smaller pieces required only a few hours. Beyond tenderizing, buttermilk created a tacky surface that grabbed flour and held it firmly throughout frying. Some families added hot sauce directly to the buttermilk bath, allowing flavors to penetrate deep into meat before cooking. The technique was especially valued for older chickens or tougher cuts needing help becoming tender. Buttermilk soaking became so essential that many cooks considered this step non-negotiable for proper soul food.
Which secret technique did your grandmother guard? Drop your family's fried chicken mystery in the comments, hit like and subscribe for more recipes they never wanted you to know.